Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Um, I can't, it would take me about a half hour in this monologue, which I won't do, to explain why this session with Jack Wilson is so important today, because Jack has written Empower Your Golden Years. I'm actually holding up, I actually read this and I'm not I'm not trying to get on your good side, Jack, but I actually read it. Why? Because I'm in my golden years,
Yeah,
and actually,
we
according
both
to
are.
my we both
Yeah,
are, and
yeah,
according to my age and what I read this morning, they classified. Somebody 40 years old is middle age now, and
yeah, yeah.
anyway, they have now classified you and I as elderly, and I'm
I
not too
know.
happy about that. I ain't happy about that. But let me just quickly tell the story of Jack and I. Jack and I both joined Bold Authors Network with Kay Wagner, in and of herself a best-selling author,
Yeah,
and a quintessential book marketer. And she was starting Bold Authors Network last January. And it's so funny because I joined, and I was one of the first, as Jack was, and we were in there. And it's so funny because, there's 20, 25 of us, and in this Zoom boxes, and Jack is there, and I'm here, and uh, there's chemistry, but, it's just a box, and it's cold, and it's Zoom. And for 3 months, I keep staring at Jack's name, Jack Wilson, Jack F. Wilson. I keep staring at his name, and I can't. There's something, deep within my mental recesses up here, processes, and I'm saying there's something about that name. I just no, no, no. And then I happen to have watched during that 3 month period, close to, I watched one of my favorite westerns. Actually, between The Searchers and Shane, those two are and Rio Bravo's up there too. I love westerns. But in the movie Shane, it's such a powerful movie. And at the very end of the movie, the whole movie is built and is building up to this final gunfight scene in the movie, which is one of the great gunfight scenes ever because there's so much buildup to it. And Shane, played by Alan Ladd, is in this bar called Grafton's, and there is the bad guy, Jack Wilson, played by Jack Palance. And then it like all registered with me, and the light bulbs went off, and that began. That began, the kinship with Jack. But more importantly, and we're going to talk about a lot of this today, Empower Your Golden Years, which is available on Amazon, etc. It is so important, not for people who are going to enter their golden years, but as Jack and I discussed, because I read the book, took notes. I took notes, like 8 pages of notes, because so much of what Jack talks about and what we're going to talk about now is without being informed, but knowing enough. I've been doing a lot of this stuff for a bunch of years, the nutrition, the exercise. And Jack's going to talk all about that. But more importantly, for my son who's 40, he should know this stuff. And, I'm going to give him a copy. He should know the stuff to prepare. And we can talk about that too, because the book is just as important for people who are securely, in their 40s and they still think they're invincible. And old age is just it's just a concept. It's not real, but you wake up one morning and it is real.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why this is so important. And I also got to tell everybody, subscribe because Kay Wagner, our leader, always talks about being visual, and how important all that stuff is, and just kind of, and we live in a world of algorithms and keywords and metadata. So subscribe. That just kind of helps the whole thing rolling along. So I'm hugely honored, Jack. And why don't you say some? some background, some do a little background stuff, and then we're going to jump into the essence of Empower Your Golden Years. Take it away.
Well, thank you. One of the things that we talked about is how did I get to this particular point where I started writing Empower Your Golden Years? And I've had a lot of different careers in my life that was an evolution of how I got here. That my first part, I always wanted, even as a young age, I got involved with construction. I love construction, love the drafting of it, and I became an architect. And, it took a long time. When you get through school, it's 16 hours of an exam to get to that particular point. Yeah, I know it, huh? And eventually, at some point, I was with a big corporation, and as big corporations do, people buy each other out and things change. And so I was in my early 30s and I started my own business. And I had that for 24 years. And thinking back about, you know, just you and I talking over the last, month or so and my evolution, when you're an architect, you have some projects that you really love. I mean, I had some great residential projects for high-end clients. I did a world headquarters for a division for the largest candle manufacturer of the country.
Wow.
You know, Calvin, I built candle factories all across the country, and I would dream at night of paraffin going in one ear and votive candles going out another. But as kind of things go, and anybody that has their own business out there, this, you're going to be involved in the ups and downs, the financial world, national. So I lived through three financial turndowns. I kept my business going. I kept making payroll. But it was stressful. It took a lot of mental and physical strain on me. So in '06 or so, just before that, everybody remembers 2010, I decided to close my business. I think it was about 57 or 58 or something like that. So that was the first time I retired. And the interesting thing, before that, I started volunteering for Habitat for Humanity.
Wow.
And the saying is that changes, the people's lives. It changes your life also. And that's where my evolution of who I became and eventually how I wrote this book came about. And, I'd like to, talk about that. So when I first started working there, I walked on the job site. I remember the first day I walked on the job site. I just loved that. I love the noise. I love the smell. I love the sound of everything. And I just couldn't wait to go back the next day. There's the camaraderie of, everyone being there. And became an orange shirt crew leader. And that was great. You learned how to, I mean, you did everything. But the important thing that started to happen then is that I would meet the families that were going to be future homeowners that were going to buy these homes. They were young families, and you work with them because they help build their own homes. And so you hear their stories. And some of the stories are just unbelievable. They're depending on, what nationality they are, they're living in neighborhoods that they're not wanted, or, it's just, I don't know if I could live like that. So anyway, they're working hard. They're hard workers to change their lives. And so you want to start doing that with them. And just kind of a funny story of that. For some reason, we learned how to do everything as a crew leader, whatever it was. But somehow I got involved in building out all the interiors. We would put the shell up, and so then I'd come in with the crew and build out the walls before the electrician or sheetrock or anything like that came in. And one day they had different build days. So it was a law day. So they had law firms and this, that, whatever. And I had two homes right next to each other. And I had one law firm and another law firm and another. And we're getting going like 7:30 in the morning. And I'm over there talking to one. And I said, you know those people next door? And they go, oh yeah, they're our competition. And I don't even know how this came out of my mouth. I said, you know what? I was just talking with them, and they know they're going to build out this house before you're even going to get halfway done. And they go, no, 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 that wasn't that. So it kind of gave them a little bit of incentive. And then I go over to the next house and I say, do you know those guys over there? And they say, oh, yeah. And I said, they say they're going to have their house done, all the interiors done before you. And by the end of their work period, which was like 12:30 today, we had both of those houses finished because we kind of kept both of them
Competition.
go. Yeah, competition and
Competition.
in a friendly way, but
Sure.
it was kind of interesting. But one of the things I learned a lot of things from that, but one of the things was, and I mentioned families before. So again, I was in charge of all the interiors. That happened for a couple of years. I do this. And one of the families that I had mentioned, um, well, even before that, I was working with this woman. She was 21 years old. She had a 10-year-old daughter. And that was just at the break. So mentally, I did the math, but it didn't comprehend. We had a break and then we came back. And I asked her what it was like to be 11 or 12 and have a child. And that was an interesting conversation.
Mm,
Here in Sarasota, there is a school for mothers, young mothers. You can actually bring your child to the school.
wow.
And that enabled her to finish school. She went off to junior college. She got into a nursing profession. So, once again, you kind of look back at that. But one major turn in my life was that finished out one house and the family, and they had young kids and little, and they, you meet everybody, you become friends with them. They used to call me Mr. Jack, and so they had dedications on a Saturday at the end of a build, and so they said, "Please come over, please come over after the dedication." So I did, and I walked in, and I never really saw houses done. Sometimes I'd see the sheetrock, but it was painted. It had furniture in it, and so there was a whole bunch of relatives, a Hispanic family, and the women were in the kitchen, and the smell of the food, boy, that was just great, and the people talking, and the little kids running around like crazy. Mr. Jack, come and see my room, come and see my room. So I did, and they were all excited, and I left, and I walked out the front door, and I stopped, and I started thinking, how many times have I walked through that front door? Just 100 times during construction. I'd either walk through the front door, or I'd go through the wall, where the window open or something like that. But something changed then, because then I walked out. The sun was up here, and I had a hat on, and I looked down, and I was in the driveway, and it was concrete, and there was like a brown line right up to the end of the concrete, and the green sod, and the heat on my chest. And all of a sudden, I realized this wasn't a construction site anymore. This was now somebody's home. This is the vehicle that's going to change their lives for generations to come. And it just changed me in that. And part of my evolution is that at that point, I couldn't do enough to kind of try to make that difference and try to keep on going. And just the way I was, and that'll tie in a little bit later on another part of it. So when I eventually closed my business, I got more involved with the habitat end of it, and I started getting involved with the business end because I ran a business for a while, and I understood that, and eventually, again, I was retired, and somebody said to me that was involved with the national organization, we have a Habitat affiliate in Texas, and it's got some problems. And he said, would you be willing to go there and see what you could do? And I go, I'm retired. And he said, well, just kind of go because I think you could help out and this sort of stuff. So I did an interview online, and and eventually they called me up and said, would you come over? And they hired me. And so my wife and I had to make a decision. We're going to leave subtropics of Florida and go to East Texas. But because of the economy, everything had kind of fallen apart anyway. And we went. And a board member said to me, this is a troubled company. And I said, well, okay. They had no idea how bad it was, Calvin. That first year, I fired five of the six directors,
Wow.
and I just started to rebuild it. I got there January 14th, and be honest with you, I didn't know if I was gonna, if the whole organization was going to survive that first year, but we did, and we grew and became very successful over the next 15 years or so. But in the fall of that year, a hurricane blew through the area. And the guy that I had running the Habitat Restore was also writing grants for us and came to me and said, Jack, you know, our mission statement says build and renovate. We're not doing any renovations. It says some grant money available for seniors. Okay. So at that point, I was 60, and senior citizen, and we were just talking about this, was 55. And I'm thinking, boy, what happened? I'm not a senior citizen, but I guess I am. But we applied for that grant. We got $225,000. We did 20 critical repairs for
Wow.
seniors and veterans and persons with disability. And that was our start. By the time I retired 15 years later, we had applied for, received, and spent over $10 million. We did over 1,500 critical repairs,
Oh,
impacting the lives
yeah.
of over 1,800 people. And then if you add the people in the houses, there's thousands of people that you have made a change. And this kind of goes back to how your life changes. One of the things in the very, very beginning is that my critical repairs. I had this elderly woman come up to our office and she wanted to talk to me, and I went and talked with her. She grabbed my hand, and I'll always remember her hands were very, very warm. And she was shorter than me, looked me in the eye, and she had tears in her eyes. And she said, Mr. Jack, you know, I am so grateful for Habitat and you and everything that you've done. I'm not embarrassed that people come and visit my home anymore. But this was the killer. She said, I couldn't fix it. And that really bothered me. My husband and I built that house. I couldn't fix it because I had to choose between food and medicine. Let that sink in.
Mm.
So the more and more people that I got involved with as seniors living in the deplorable homes that they lived in, they were all our neighbors and they lived all around us, but it was kind of an affluent area in a way, and people didn't really, and that's everywhere. It's probably where you live, it's where I live now, and that sort of thing. Those are our neighbors, and that changed my life. That made that critical repair program the the essence of my, that's what I wanted to be known for there. Even though we did still, I built 100+ homes and that, but it was changing people's lives. As a matter of fact, on our 25th anniversary at some point in time, how I started out that talk, I said to everybody, I'd like you to close your eyes for a minute, and I'd like you to think of your parents and your grandparents and your siblings and maybe even your children. And I said, how are you going to feel if they lived? And I went through just lists of different things of, I'd walk into some homes and there'd be holes in the roof and it wasn't a skylight. They'd sleep in their winter clothes because they had no heat.
Mm.
Sometimes they slept in other rooms that they knew it was going to rain because it leaked in their bedroom. You can't make this stuff up. And so it was more and more and more that you could do, um, that I would try to do that. And we were very successful in that. We were in the top 2 to 5% of the number of critical repairs throughout the Habitat affiliates in the United States,
Wow.
for our size. So that helps. That kind of leads to how
Yeah.
I started writing this book. So I had an idea in my mind of what I was going to do when I retired. I knew it was time to retire. I was approaching 75. My wife and I talked. We wanted to come back to Florida. And so we did. But I pictured that I was going to be playing golf, sitting on a beautiful white beach that's 20 minutes from here, drinking cold beer all the time. And and that never happened. And one of the reasons it didn't happen is some reason. I mean, I do have a reason. That's another discussion for another time. But I had to have two carpal tunnel surgeries, and I had to have rotator cuff repair. And so I haven't played golf in 4 years. I got to get back to it. But I would, so we had a big house in Texas, and so we could be in different rooms, my wife and I, and working. And I mean, we were aware that we were reaching the same place, but it was a little different. Here it's 1,000 square feet, so and my wife still works out of the home, and as I do now too. And one day she told me, Jack, you got to find a hobby. And so, with that seed being, settling in. And I would go to the pool here in the mid-morning, and there's a bunch of my neighbors and sweet people. They were all in their 80s, mid 80s, maybe more, and all of them had severe health issues, you know. And we'd be talking, and I'd be sitting there, and part of the conversation or just listening, and I'm thinking, I do not want to become one of those people. There's got to be something because my mind is young. I know it's young. It still is young. I mean, sometimes my body reminds me that it's not so young, but I mean, everybody's like that. And so you had asked me, um, what inspired my book and
Yeah.
who did I write it for? But in the beginning, I wrote it for myself because I, I knew you could be very, very easily fall in that same trap and go down and down and down. And so I didn't want that to happen to me. And but I wanted to do something to help people around me. And that's how the evolution of empower your golden years, an holistic approach to vitality, confidence, and well-being, came about. And I wrote that, and actually that is book one of there's three books in that series, the Living Well series. And one of the chapters in there is actually on mindfulness, which I think is just mindfulness meditation, which is so big for me. I've been practicing that for years. That became my second book because you could only do so much in a chapter. And I said, that's going to be my second book. And then the third book, Energy Awakening, that just came out. But so that's a long story of how I evolved that came up with that.
Mm.
Because you know what? When I was an architect and I was very proud of my work, nothing changes your life until you touch someone's soul and you change theirs. That's kind of what keeps me getting up every morning and keeps me trying to get this book going or that. And, as you and I have talked, there's others in the pipeline coming up on different subjects that would help people. And the interesting thing, you talked about your son that's 40. My sons are in their 50s, or they will turn 50 this year. And I've talked to them about it, but it is, yeah, Dad, okay, yeah, 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 you're right. But you are so right. Some of these things I did wish at 50 or 40 that I was a little bit more aware of. Eating properly, for one thing, you know, and, not drinking as much alcohol, and exercising more. And put, in all fairness to, the younger generation, I mean, they're out there working, and they'll have, their families. And, you know, unless you really have that time and the discipline to exercise, I can understand it. And I can really understand it.
There's you said a bunch of stuff. First of all, might just comment on Habitat for Humanity. Jimmy Carter was really involved in that,
Yes,
and
yeah.
he was an exceptional human being.
Hmm. That
Exceptional.
is, in one of the talks, I would talk all the time about it, that it was a common misconception in that he started it. He didn't start it. He got involved 10 years later, but he made it famous.
Sure.
He made it famous.
I
And
I see visual. I see pictures of him,
oh, sure.
with a hammer and
Yes.
put nails, on the roof or something. So he was really involved in that. And the other, another little takeaway. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm never sure where it came from. Actually, I think I ought to ask AI, but it may come from the Bible or it may come from the Quran, actually, one of the two. But
Yeah.
he, he or she who saves a life saves the world.
And they saved themselves.
Yeah, and just powerful stuff. Actually, I
Hmm.
made a meme of that because in my book, I wrote about that. But I see and listening to you all this energy that went into you and what we do,
Hmm.
what we do as writers is we take all this energy and we do write for ourselves. That was very profound
Hmm.
that you said that because that was the only person I wrote for, in my three books, is I wrote for myself. I had
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah.
And then when it's done, you try to look for a reason why people are going to read it.
Hmm.
You're easy because your book is basic surviving
Yeah.
and preparing for this journey. And if you
Hmm.
do it right, and that's my other thing, why I love your book, because if you do it right and you do all the stuff the right way, leading up to turning 55 or 60, if you've done things right, not, it's never too late. That's number one. Never too late, no matter what, for sure. Never too late in anything in pursuit of health. But if you do it right at an earlier age, you're going to get rewarded. And I know in 1969, when I was studying pharmacology at Rutgers, I said to myself, Calvin, sometimes I used to talk to myself. I said, I don't think I want to age traditionally. And meaning I just didn't want to be like the old people in my life. I didn't want to be like that. So I was nobody's perfect, but I began doing a lot of things back in those days that would help me prepare for where I'm at now. I'm over 80
Hmm.
and functioning at a higher level than I ever did. Up here, this thing works
Hmm.
better
Yeah. Yeah.
than ever
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. I hear
I'm
you, man.
banging out books. You
Well,
know,
I
I
hear
wrote
you.
I wrote, my last book. It took a couple months, banged it out at 80.
Hmm.
And there's a ton more inside me. I just bang this stuff out because the thing works really well. Why? Because I didn't follow all of this. I didn't know it, but in my own little way, I followed I followed what you write about, and it's so critically important. And you just said it, for your son. Yeah, Dad, and my son too, because I send him a million articles. I sit here and I read a million articles from WebMD and Super Agers and all this stuff. So I'm always sending him, and he said, "Yeah, Dad, yeah, Dad, yeah, Dad," and I keep telling him, you're gonna wake up one day and you're there.
Hmm.
Have a nice day. You're there. Boom.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
that's so true. The very first chapter of that particular book is entitled "Age is Just a Number." I mean, it really is. And you probably noticed it but each chapter I try to do a quote from a famous person, but that particular one is "You're never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream" by C.S. Lawrence. Isn't that something?
correct. It's so,
Lewis, I mean,
listen,
excuse me.
it
Yeah.
is so true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's so true.
It
If
really is.
somebody were to read, well, somebody should. People should
Hmm.
absolutely read. Is there one particular chapter that, if they only read one chapter, what would you want them to read?
I think it goes back to, you and I are going over these things, and I was trying to, because each one, in my opinion, is very important because it leads to something else. But I think it's the very first one, the introduction and that first chapter. Age is just a number, and you talk about a lot of different things, and it's kind of like if people get through the first, if they don't like the book, then they won't get through the first chapter, and because they don't want to denial or deflection, whatever the right term is. But yeah, I think it's the very first chapter of that one. That kind of keeps you going and the different things. And, obviously, as you look through the table of contents, you can say, well, I want to read about nutrition, or I want to read about, some of there's a whole section on walking, which, you've heard me talk, because one of the things, like I said, I couldn't play golf or whatever. And the benefits of walking during my research on this book. Uh, and I've heard that before, but I didn't fully understand it. So I said, oh, I can do this. This is easy. And it's an easy thing to do as I'm in a sling and a few other things, and I can walk. And from my house to is a pickleball court down there. It's like a half a mile. And when you drive something, well, you drive it like 2 minutes and you think, oh, that's not very far. I remember that. I said, I'm going to walk down to the pickleball. And so I walked down there on my first day and whatever. I get down to pickleball, thought I was going to die. And I said, I still have to walk home. I don't want to call my wife and have her come and pick me up because I'll never hear the end of it, and that sort of stuff. So I did that. But that's one of the things in the book that and I was talking about people. All you have to do is, even if you walk, 50 feet, and you do that for, a week or two, and then next week 60 or something like that, and do it. I was a little extreme because my mind was telling me something that my body again reacted to. But you've probably heard me say this, that last calendar year, once I really got into it, I almost did 1,200 miles calendar year.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I went through three pair of shoes, and
Wow.
and and again, that was that physicalness. We talk about the mind body connection. That physicalness actually helped my mind too, because I felt so much better doing it. I mean, yeah, I would get home, especially in the summertime, you're sweating, and and that sort of thing. But it just kind of helped you involved. And with the weather and everything so far down here, and I know it's not compared to what you guys just went through, and that's one of the reasons I'm here in Florida and not New England. I mean, I was looking at it this morning. I've only done like 63 miles since the first of the year. It'll pick up as I get going and the weather starts getting better. But that makes a major difference, even if you just pick one thing in that book that can make a difference. Matter of fact, I had somebody tell me it wasn't the walking, but it was all the balancing exercises that they started doing that they felt that made a major difference to them and made them a little bit more steady on their feet so they weren't as afraid of falling,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is a major thing for us
Hey,
as we get older.
I know all about that.
Yeah.
I had two really bad, and I'm in pretty good shape. As a matter of fact, I'm in really good shape. I mean, up until before I hurt my knee, I was playing tennis, 5 days a week. And after tennis, I hurt my knee 10 years ago. I had to find something else. So, I hit the gym and weights and stretching and I've been doing the stationary bike for 30 years
Hmm.
anyway. And
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah.
pedal an hour and a half on a stationary bike, 4 or 5 times a week. So I'm in really, really, really good shape. But you get older and you slow down and stuff. And so I had two really, really, really bad falls.
Hmm.
One I probably told you about. I fell
Falling
down,
down the stairs, I
yeah,
think, was
11
one of them.
steps.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah.
was a whole spiritual thing, because I
Hmm.
should have died, and I didn't. But after that, and I fell in my basement. I kind of slapped my face at that. I started going online and looking. So I do balancing things 3 to 4 times a week, all
Mhm.
kind of, with all the stuff, standing on
Yeah,
one foot, the whole thing.
yeah, yeah, I
And,
do too. Yeah,
it's just loaded with all that. And I absolutely feel better
yeah,
from it. And so you talked before you made a comment about mindfulness, uh, uh, and how important it is. Can you talk a little bit about the mind-body connection? How really important that is, the mind-body connection. I know when I'm done with my hour and a half, exercises 3, 4 times a week, man, I feel great,
yeah.
and I really do. So, talk a little bit about mindfulness and kind of explain it to folks.
Sure. And actually, I just heard a quote on television last night. I had another quote in mind that I wrote down, but basically it says, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. So there's that mind telling your body what you can and you cannot do. So I started mindfulness, mindful practice 30, 40 years ago, different things. But one of the things, and I, I do it every morning. So it's part of my morning routine before I go out and walk. And, um, and just for anybody that's listening, that wanting to know how to get started in it, there are so many different mindful meditation YouTube. You talk about YouTube on there, anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, or actually even longer, where you can sit down, just get into a quiet spot and just kind of listen to that. And one of the things, and actually I do have, if I'm not that I'm working with anybody, because even though I do have a certification, I don't do it as a class or anything like that. But if with friends or something like that. And I actually did part of it even before I came on. I mean, I was excited about being here, but you've got to calm your body down. And it's basically, taking deep breaths. And the breath work is just so important. Whether you're going into a meeting or say you're in a disagreement with somebody or just whatever it is, take deep breaths and remind. So what I do here in the morning is actually in this particular chair, and it's usually dark because I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But as I start going through that, you just kind of take some deep, deep breaths in and out, and you count different things, whatever. And then you kind of mentally kind of go through, take the breaths. And for me, this is one of the exercises, and this ties into Tai Chi also, which I'll put that off for the time being. But you start to be more aware. That's what the mindfulness is, being more aware of yourself and your environment around you. And so as you start going through, you become, you take your deep breaths and you start thinking about, take it in, you hold it, you exhale, you push it out through your stomach. And then you just start thinking, you almost feel energy and you put it into your shoulders and your arms, and then your head, your neck, your back. And just kind of let that energy kind of flow through you as you're breathing. You're breathing in that energy and you just kind of work it through your body. And if you have a soreness or something like that, and my knee, one knee in particular, used to hurt all the time, and I would kind of focus on that, and breathing and thinking about that, and just kind of going through your whole body, and again, kind of coming back up, and you feel energized by the time you're done. And it's really good. And I know a couple of times that I've got into some stressful situations when I was working or would be in meetings or something like that, and things are going sideways. I would just take those 3 deep breaths or whatever, and then you kind of control, you keep your for me, my anger, my anxiety in check, so you can keep your brain cleared to make hopefully rightful decisions to move forward. So, with that said, like I mentioned, there's a bit in this particular book, and I just knew there was so much more to it. And that's how the second book, Inner Peace Through Mindfulness, came about.
Okay.
But I just find it's a big part of my day. And even during, like I mentioned, even during the day, in certain times, I will just kind of take a deep breath. And you know where sometimes I do it is, and we talk about being seniors. Okay, this, I don't mean it to come out wrong, but if you go to the supermarket and you've got a lot of seniors that take up the aisles and go so slow or something like that, or you're checking out and you feel bad for them because they're trying to figure out the credit card or anything like that. That's what I do. I just have to take a deep breath and just kind of calm down. I don't have to be any place in a particular time, whatever it might be. And I don't mean it in a bad way, but we all have to figure out what is the tool that's going to work for us as an individual to make us um, a better person, I guess is the right way, or a better way of getting through a day or a situation to move forward.
Yeah, I'm listening to all this, and again, I live this stuff.
Sure, we
You
all
know,
do. Yeah, yeah.
I live it. I live it. Um, and there's a few things as far as empower your years,
Hmm.
and I'm going to weave this into a plug, but I'll
Sure.
do it craftily. Um, one of the things I learned and why people, no matter what, why it's important to read this because you put everything together and it's there and
Hmm.
it's there and it's a quick read, boom, boom,
Yes.
boom.
Yeah.
But and people say, well, I know, and well, actually, they don't because I spent 25 years working for the world's wealthiest Italian. A
Hmm.
lot of people know that about me, and because I met Kay Wagner and she read my tortoise book, she said, inside my tortoise book, there's another book about the fact that I work for the world's wealthiest Italian, blah blah. So, I sat down with Kay and we wrote 10 things I learned from the billionaire. And
Hmm.
what are the 10 things to turn this around? Why people should read Empower Your Golden Years if they think they know it, they don't,
Yeah.
and or they haven't committed it to the memory process. Because one of the lessons I wrote about in here is for the learning process to really be complete. It takes about 10 passages through
Yeah. Yeah.
the two earlobes and the eyes. So you got to take something and let it go through there 10 times. And maybe on the 10th passage, it gets stuck, what I call in the quicksand, where
Hmm.
you want it to get stuck
Yeah.
up here. So, and that's powerful. Um, I had to say that because it's really real,
It is real.
it's real. Part of it is and reading and reading what you wrote and my own notes, the word purpose, which I think is, I guess, part of mindfulness. If you have a purpose that gives you things that we'll never really even understand, the energy and the will and the power to move on, and you don't. I mean, I don't because I have purpose because the
Hmm.
stuff I'm doing, it's a huge purpose. So I think that is like taking a pill for longevity to have purpose.
Hmm.
Comment.
Well, it's so true. I mean, if you don't have a purpose in life, and as I mentioned before, for me, is really coming face to face with the reality of life when you're surrounded by people. So every single senior, low-income senior that we dealt with, or handicapped individual, or family, or something like that, they're all human. They all have the same thoughts and feelings as we do. They want to have a good life for their family and then move forward. The only difference in many cases is just their ability, maybe their education and making money. So they can't, they have to deal with things that you and I don't have to deal with. So as they're getting older, what I found, and as I alluded to before, is the financial end of it. So if you don't have the money to live properly, whether it is in your home or being able to buy the food that you need for nutrition or to buy the medicine that you need. I mean, that just think about that. The strain that that puts on you 24 hours a day. You go to bed thinking about it. You wake up thinking about it. You know, how am I going to get the money to pay for this or pay for that? And my health is going and how to deal with it. So when you really come face to face with that and understand it, and it's just like you said, it's like 10 times because, you know, our children, and even when we were that age, we may know every single thing that talk about in that particular book, but it didn't stick there. Or, you know, and I knew a lot about the lower income families and some of the situations that they're in until I actually lived with it around me. Did it make an impact? And that became my purpose, you know, in life. And and I don't see that changing. I mean, with the different books and the different topics that I'm addressing as I move forward, and just kind of go from there. I think the only thing, you know, we talk about this too in the Bold Authors Network, and we're in that visibility. It's really the time to kind of figure out what you work on a particular day to move forward. But when you think about that, and I've thought about this too, sometimes I make that a problem in my mind. You know, I don't have enough time to do that. But then when I think about the the alternative, or I could be living like some of the people that we tried to make a difference in people's lives. Okay, I'm going to deal with, oh, I don't have enough time to get this done or that done, or Kay's, you know, Kay sometimes gives us these exercises to do or whatever. You know, it kind of puts your brain in a certain mindset. You know, we talk about mindsets too, to kind of keep going and trying to make the difference.
Okay.
I feel my books could make a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By the way, absolutely. Because again, to repeat, because it's one of the 10 to
Mhm.
repeat. You got to hear this stuff. You got to know it. You got to hear it. You
Yep.
got to digest it. You got to
Yep.
absorb it. You got to
Hmm.
see it. You got to hear it. I mean, the whole process. And you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, you're going to get it.
Hmm.
And different, you know, can hear it from different sources, read it different sources, and that's why it's so critical. And what I like about your series is you just make it easier to
Hmm.
learn because it's
Yep.
all there. Because you know, I look at my life and it's so fractured with all this stuff flying at me because I express interest in different things, so it flies at me all day long, different stuff, and it's all over the place, and it's not organized, and it's invisible because it's all over the place. But you put it together succinctly and easily to read and easily to take notes. By the way, I've been taking notes. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, sure. You always take notes, Calvin.
I know. You see me always. I
Yeah,
was a note taker. I was a great note taker
yeah.
at Rutgers. A really good note taker. I learned shorthand and stuff, and so I've been taking notes here from you. So, all right, some more stuff just to kind of highlight some things. How can older adults, and I kind of know the answer because I'm doing some of this stuff, become mentors and contributors and community builders because that's what you did.
Well, let's just say that getting involved with some organization that's going to Habitat for Humanity, that's a great way of doing it. When I was more involved, I think there was just about 1,000 affiliates throughout the United States. So you're bound to find one in your area that you can go. And you don't need any experience, you don't need any of that. But the interesting thing, when I was in Sarasota as an Orange Shirt crew leader, some of the people there, they went above and beyond that. And one fellow I remember, he would go over to a let me see. Well, it was a school, and he would read to the children. That was part of a program, and he said he loved doing that. And then I met a couple of other people, both in Florida and in Texas, that were involved with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. You know, and they had And they would bring their, they sponsored, I'm not sure what you would call them, um, their responsibility sometimes to the job site or whatever, and you'd kind of watch them grow. I mean, that's kind of one way of doing it. And and actually, when you and I were talking about some of these questions, I even looked it up. There's a mentoring.org that you could go on. And they have a list of all different types of organizations that could fit your particular
Wow.
skill set or
Wow.
your desire, to work. Maybe it is working with young children in reading in the library or in school or just talking to a young child and whatever it is. So I found that, and I just, since you and I had talked about coming on, for some reason I found that, and I said, well, I'm glad you asked that question. I wrote it down here, but
Yeah, yeah.
so
Very important. It's funny. This channel where I'm broadcasting from um, was born out of my connecting on LinkedIn August of 2020. It's going to be 6 years. I had a cable TV talk show back
yeah,
then. I
yeah,
was producing, co-hosting. We brought in some national type guests. I did. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I did it. Brought in Gilbert Gottfried and Frankie Previtt, who won an Academy Award
mhm,
for Dirty Dancing music. I was just bringing people in, no budget, no nothing. But when COVID hit, I'm sitting in this
yeah,
chair. What do I do? And so I was just connecting with lots of people on LinkedIn to keep busy. Keep busy. Keyword, keep busy.
very
Uh,
important. Yeah.
Come up with a purpose. And there was a Rutgers sophomore, a track star, and I connected with her, and I sent her a little message. She actually replied to me, and I sent her another message, and she replied. And then I said to her, "How about if we talk on the phone? You kind of seem really you're a sophomore, but you seem more than a sophomore." She said, "Yeah, sure, we can talk on the phone." We talked on the phone, and as I'm talking to her, I'm saying, "My goodness, she's a sophomore track star, but so grounded and so mature that I felt I was talking to a 40-year-old." So I said, and the light bulb went off. Why don't I interview people like her?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's how conversations with Calvin, We the Species got born. And I went on to become really good friends with her. And she worked with me for 4 years till she graduated. She went, she got a master's. Till she graduated, she worked with me on this channel, doing some stuff and helping me. And I mentored her. And of course, I then I've been as I was doing all this stuff after I retired. I decided to give back to Rutgers, and I
Mhm.
did an official mentoring program with Rutgers, and on my own. So at my peak, 2 years before the pandemic, so I was way into my 70s. I was mentoring 14 students at Rutgers,
Mm.
communication and media, and I was running back to campus 3 times a week. And I had a table at the diner, and I'm spending, and I was mentoring basketball stars, the whole thing,
Mhm.
and I loved it. And then one day I'm mentoring this kid, and it all hit me, Jack. It was like share. I always say that, slap in my face, and
Mhm.
get me to snap out of it. But I realized I said I said to this Rutgers freshman who I was mentoring, I said, it just hit me. He said, "Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm more than a half century older than you."
Yeah.
And I mean, it is so good for the soul.
Yeah.
And of course, that mentoring and giving back, people took notice. And before I know it, the following year, I'm teaching at Rutgers University.
Mhm.
So when most people are doing what you love to do, play golf, I'm started teaching. Most
Mhm.
people are now left what they were doing, left teaching, left whatever, and now they're playing golf. And I never played golf, and I went and I started teaching at Rutgers University the
Mhm.
stuff that I was good at. Absolutely, it's like taking a pill a day.
Mhm.
some kind of longevity thing, that purpose of mentoring people. Um, Another question to ask you, uh, maybe it's a derivation, from your books. What that you feel that can, three daily habits that can dramatically improve life after 60?
Okay, I think this could apply to everybody, but I know in particular it applies to me. First of all, a proper diet, nutrition. I'm going to go back to that mindfulness meditation and basically some form of activity. And for me, at the moment, it's walking. So let me talk about nutrition just for a second because you talk about the light bulb going off. So, throughout my architectural career and whatever, um, I don't know if I ate that much fast food, but I wasn't really eating healthy. I did it drink alcohol, not to an extreme, but I did. And just sweets was a big thing, man. Um, and I met my wife 20 some odd years ago now, and she has a autoimmune, um, a gluten autoimmune situation there. And so she had to eat gluten free. And so, um, one of the big things for me is cooking on the grill on the weekends, and all the stuff that's barbecue sauce, whatever it might be, and out there either drinking a beer or something, and this, that, whatever. And so I had to be very, very careful about not cross-contaminating the food. So say it was chicken, whatever it is. So I'd have chicken with barbecue sauce and all this side, and I'd have the utensils, and on this side I'd have different utensils and trying to keep everything clean and this, that, whatever. And it was a chore, but I did it. And a couple of times she did get sick because of, she did have a reaction because of it. And I said, this is wrong. And so I started eating more gluten free. I won't say I'm 100%. I'm probably more 100% than I was then, but I can tell you for a fact that within a relatively short period of time, I felt better.
Well,
I didn't understand it. And once you feel better from something, then you start recognizing, oh, well, you thought that food was good, and yeah, I mean, but maybe you were a little sluggish, and maybe you put on weight, you couldn't get the weight off, and that sort of stuff. And so, and then at that point in time, um, I had opened up my architectural office, a branch office here in Florida, because my main office was in Massachusetts. And we talked about the weather before. I couldn't stand the winters anymore. I'd get so cold. But I would be down here, and this is where I met Patricia. And then sometimes I would go back to Massachusetts and meet up, and I'd go back to eating the way, I'd eat a lot of gluten. And I remember going back to wherever I was staying or a hotel room or something like that, and I'd feel terrible. And I'm going, it's got to be the gluten. I mean, it just kind of, like you said, that light finally went off that if I'm going to feel better, and I mean, then I was probably in my late 50s. I said, I just have to start eating now. And actually, um, let me see, it's probably been about 3 years now. I just totally off all alcohol. Maybe once in a while I had a beer, but at all. And I noticed a difference with that too. I mean, I don't, there's no craving for that or whatever. I mean, I still have craving for sweets because I'm trying to eliminate sweets. But that's that. So the mindfulness we talked about, every morning I try to do that. I just feel better. And also the word is awareness, not only in yourself and mindfulness, but what's going on around you. And when I walk, um, at first when I started walking, I'd listen to some news or uh, TED Talks or that sort of thing. But I was missing Mother Nature and everything that was happening around me because I live in a very nice area, um, whatever. And So once I kind of got that out of my mind, you start seeing so much more. You start hearing so much more. You start hearing Mother Nature's sounds and seeing things and walking. And again, that's good for your brain. Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you some useless trivia here that I found out is that, like I said, I get up at 4. So sometimes, especially in the summertime, I try to go out early because of the heat and it'd still be dark and I'd have a flashlight. So, the saying that early bird catches the worms? No, that's not quite true because the bunnies are up first. The bunnies are out and they're in the grass, they're eating everything, and then you'll notice that you'll start hearing the birds wake up and the twerping and all that sort of stuff, and then the bunnies disappear. Well, no, this is true. People think I'm joking when I'm telling you this, but this is true. And then the squirrels come out. So it's the bunnies, the birds, and the squirrels
Wow.
that you
Interesting.
and I wouldn't have known that if I didn't really kind of with
Wow.
this mindfulness meditation and trying to be more aware of my environment as going that. So that's useless trivia. Someone
That's
says
very
something about
useless trivia, but I like it. It's interesting. We could never be friends, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you get up at 4, I go to bed at 3
I
a.m.
know you do. I know you do.
Literally at 3. And sometimes I'm writing Kay at 2 in the morning, and she gets back to me.
I know it.
I literally go to bed but I do, sleep is part of the whole program. I do
Oh, it
sleep till
is.
10, so I'm getting
Mhm.
my 7 hours of sleep. I'm just on a different Orcadian cycle, whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah, and whatever works for you. I mean, you two have talked about this too. Because I get up so early and my time is more once I get to like 6 or 7, I'm kind of done. I mean, I can't do anything after that.
So, what
And
time you go to bed? Like at 8?
no, no, maybe about 10ish. I don't get the 7 or 8 hours sleep that I know I'm supposed to, but I never have. I've always been maybe 5, 6 hours of sleep, and my body is awake and going from there. And so I know that I should try to get more sleep, but I wake up and I'm there, and my mind starts going all of a sudden. You know, I've kind of talked about this, I think I don't know if it was Bold Authors or something, but one of the things that speaking about mind-body connection, but one of the things that's amazing about our minds, especially your subconscious minds, that's always working. And actually, I learned this in design school years and years ago, that if we had a design program problem, and we're trying to work through it, and we come to just like a mental block, and we can't kind of break through that. One of the things that I've learned, actually I was told this and it worked, is you stop. And and I've done this for years and years and years. So, and either just go to bed, or I might go and just kind of get in a recliner or just kind of take a little bit of a nap. I start thinking about steps 1, 2, and 3 and what I have to do. And then I just kind of take my mind, kind of like doze for a second. 9 times out of 10, the solution comes to me.
Hmm.
No, and no, try this sometime, and you will see this. And I can still visually seeing now some design solutions that I couldn't kind of figure out. I'd wake up and I'd see it, and then I'd go out and then I draw it all up. So a lot of times the same things happen to me. I'll be thinking about, we talked about having uh, things to do during the day, and you want to get these things done, and if you don't get them done, or things take longer than they're supposed to, and your things are there, when you go to bed at night, that's still there. So it goes into your subconscious. So, and I start waking up like 3:30, 4 o'clock, and my eyes are wide awake, and I'm starting to think about this stuff. And I know maybe I should stay in bed for another couple hours, but it's not going to happen. I love getting up early. And
Wow.
I love going out walking early too, depending on the time of the year,
Yeah.
stars and the moon. And actually, I think I mentioned this to you on my website, jackfwilson.com. I have a blog, And every Monday morning, I do a picture of the week. And that's pictures that I've taken on my walks.
Wow,
And I have
that's so cool.
my different thoughts about that. Um, and so sometimes you'll see the moon reflecting off some of the ponds that we have here, and or the stars, or the sun just coming up. And I just love that time. And I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't, couldn't experience it if I
Sure,
slept in.
sure.
But that's just me. You know,
Hey,
everybody is different.
everybody's different. We're
Mhm.
completely different.
Yeah.
4 a.m., 3 a.m. Hey, I laugh about that. It's kind of cute. I want to go off topic. These are the things that I've asked 700 times now, give or take. Um, so here's a question. I didn't forewarn you, so be it. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Uh-huh.
And you could be a few. There's no rules here. It's it's a provocative
Well,
question.
yeah, I think depending on which subject you're thinking about, well, Frank Lloyd Wright comes to mind right away.
Ah,
You know,
oh, because he's a great
Yeah,
architect. Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
And um, say for sports, you and I had talked. I played hockey until I was into my 30s and I got hurt and I stopped playing. I still fantasize about playing, but I know that my body, if I even started to think about going back and playing right now, which they do have a league for people in their 70s, believe it or not. Um, there's some great hockey players. Bobby Orr is one of them from, the Boston
Boston,
Bruins, and
Boston
you know,
Bruins.
and you'd have Johnny McKenzie, or there's just so many different sports stars. Ted
Sure.
Williams, for one thing,
Yeah.
growing up in Boston, you're probably a Yankees fan, but I'm a Boston fan. And you know, um, y- when I was growing up too, the Celtics, there was a guy named Bob Cousy that
I know
played.
Kuzi played for
Yeah,
Boston College. He was one of
yes.
my heroes. I'm a basketball player, so Kuzi was one of my heroes.
Well, one of the things that I kind of related to him is that he was short. He was only like 5'8", and so I used to say I was 5'8", but I've realized now I'm only 5'7". So, uh, but yeah, I mean, watching all that sort of stuff. Let me see, and say the literary world. Well, we talked about Ernest Hemingway the other day, and a lot of his great books. There are a lot of authors now that they're do. Right now, this person's alive, but I'd love to spend some time with Bill O'Reilly. Bill,
The
and
interviewer.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
sure,
he's got a
sure,
program on, and kind of going from there.
sure.
Um, you and I said before that religion and politics we shouldn't talk about. So I'll leave my political figures out of there. And
Please do.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I
don't
know
blame you.
it would it could ruin the whole time that we spend together. But yeah, so that is, and then I think and we probably all. I would like to maybe spend a day with my father again, you know,
I like that.
and just I think probably a lot of people that there's conflicts growing up and this that whatever, and in the later part of his life, I'd kind of be asking him some questions and I didn't get a straight answer, that sort of stuff. So yeah, you know, some of your relatives. My French grandmother, she was a super loving person. I loved spending time with her. So
Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
That's good. A couple, just to kind of wind down. Um, what would you say your best decade of life has been so far?
So far, and I think that. when you say a decade, you think of like in years of 10. But I think for me, and it goes back to what we were talking about, probably when I got into my 60s, maybe 62, 63, to when I retired, like 73, that was a good time frame for me because of everything that we talked about. Meeting all the people that I met that just were trying so hard to live a good life. And we had, when I say we, I had a great team. It wasn't just me, I had a great team that we could make that difference in people's lives. So that was a good time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My last question, as we wrap this up, uh, how would you like to be remembered?
You know, it kind of goes back to we kind of talked about this before, but remember a few weeks ago, Kay gave us this homework assignment, I guess, for a best of putting it there, is 6 words, stories. And I started thinking about that. How would I want to be remembered? And keeping it to 6 words. And, and going back to my time with doing critical repairs for seniors, is that I'd like someone to say, he cared, he changed my life.
Wow, I like that. I just
Yeah,
wrote that down.
he
It's great.
cared, he changed my life.
Yep.
And there's 6 words.
Wow, that's great. That was a great exercise. She always gives us
Oh,
uh,
doesn't she? Yeah,
just great, just fabulous, fabulous exercises. I have homework to do over this weekend. She
oh, me
gave me
too. Yeah, me
stuff.
too.
We got homework to do. It's so funny. I love that homework. I never liked it. I didn't like it back then, it's I went to a pretty scientific curriculum as you did,
Sure, yeah.
and I wasn't put on this earth to be any kind of a scientist, and that was a big problem for me all those years. Uh, there was something inside my belly, this creative stuff, the writing stuff, that just was stuck, and I'm busy doing being a pharmacist, and just one day I just up and quit my profession.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff, and that's why I wrote a book to kind of talk about that part of the journey. Anyway, um, this has been great, and you're forthwith herewith invited to come back and talk about uh, the latest book which is coming out. I'm here. We're brothers at Bold Authors Network, so please come
Absolutely.
back. I mean, what you write about is so important, and it's never too early and never too late to start doing this kind of stuff. Yeah, I real fast, just the never too late thing. It was 1989. It was 1989. I smoked. I can't believe I smoked.
Yeah.
And July 21st, 1999, I was a smoker. I didn't eat meat. I haven't eaten meat since 75. But I smoked, couldn't, no exercise, and I also
Mm.
weighed 351 pounds.
Did you really?
I did. I
Oh,
did. I was a big boy, and that night, going to bed, I was walking up the steps here, and I couldn't even breathe. I had to
uh-huh.
stop every 2 or 3 steps to catch my breath. And by the time I got to the top, I realized I'm dying.
Yep.
I mean, I'm
Oh,
really
yep.
dying. I'm dying. And I went to bed, and I woke up. I actually heard the word trust,
Mhm.
and I write about that too in my tortoise book. It was loud and clear, and I shook my head. I said, "Why'd you say that?" And she didn't say that. And I ran into my son's room. He was fast asleep. And then I thought about it and thought about it, and something from the universe came over me.
Mhm.
July 21st, 19, something came over me. And when my wife finally woke up, I said, I'm going to, like quoting a line from The Godfather, I'm going to take care of all family business today. She said, what do you mean? I says, I'm going on the diet. I'm going to exercise every day. I'm going to stop smoking. She said, it's great, but you can't do all. If you're going to stop smoking, you're going to gain another 50 pounds. You'll be 400 pounds. You're going to die. And if you go on a diet, you're going to be smoking 3 packs a day. You can't. So I said, no, no, you don't understand. Something is within me.
Yes,
Something
absolutely.
is so powerful within me. I'm doing everything. And I did beyond what I would have, beyond comprehension. And so in 2.5 months, every night after dinner, I walked.
Hmm.
I walked every night after dinner. I was putting 500 calories into my mouth a day, 2 pieces of pasta, a little piece of chicken, no sugar, no nothing. In 2.5 months, Jack, I lost 100 pounds.
Hmm.
And actually, there's a comedic element to that because I was on a 3 month cycle and calling on accounts when I was selling eyeglasses, and I hadn't seen somebody in 3 months, and a lot of people, they come into the office, I'm sitting, waiting to see them. They walk right by me like they didn't know me because they didn't recognize me. And
Sure.
then word on the street, because this is 1989, in the middle of the AIDS epidemic, the word on the street was Calvin had AIDS because
Oh,
I'd lost so much weight so
oh, yeah,
fast.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and never looked back. And I threw away my cigarettes, nothing, no withdrawal, nothing. It was so powerful
yeah.
in my life. And then that's why it's never too late.
It's never too late.
Never too late. So, I'm going to stop recording. This has been great.
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely great. To be continued. Don't leave. I'm just going to stop
Yeah.
recording. You
Look,
made my day. Thank you, Jack.
thank you.